One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is the belief that I have that to introduce character, it's important to introduce exemplars, and I'm going to throw in a few in the next few minutes, but it's really important to give people an architecture of their soul, at least some scheme so they can begin to understand themselves and how things are fitting together and not fitting together. And so I'm going to start with an architecture of the soul, not mine, but it's borrowed from a rabbi. And this architecture begins with the two accounts of creation in the book of Genesis. The first one, which says that man was created in God's image, and he should be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over it. The second one, a few paragraphs later, has a humbler view of man, that man is formed out of the dust of the ground. His job is to stay home and tend to the Garden of Eden and to serve it. A much more humbler view. A rabbi named Joseph Soloveitchik in 1965 published a book called The Lonely Man of Faith, where he said that these two accounts in Genesis account for the two sides of human nature, which he called Adam 1 and Adam 2. And this understanding of Adam 1 and Adam 2 is different than some Christian understandings. These are two equal sides of our nature. Adam 1 is majestic Adam, the first account of Genesis. Adam 1 is the worldly Adam, who wants to create, produce, discover things, wants to have a great career, earn victories. Successful. Adam 2 is humble Adam. Humble Adam is connected to a transcendental moral order outside of himself. Adam 2 can be stern because he rigorously serves the truth, but he's tender because he seeks humility, sacrifice, and redemption. Adam 2 wants to not only do good, but to be good. And Adam 2 is concerned with inner goodness. So while Adam 1 wants to conquer the world, Adam 2 wants to hear and obey and God's call. While Adam 1 is savoring accomplishments, Adam 2 seeks to return home and have redemption. While Adam 1 wants to ask how things work, Adam 2 wants to ask why things exist. And so Adam 1's motto is success, Adam 2's motto is love, redemption, and return. And Soloveitchik argues that we are great because we live in the contradiction between these two Adams. The outer majestic Adam and the inner humble Adam are not reconcilable. We're perpetually confronting ourselves between these two sides of our nature. And the confrontation between these two sides of our nature is difficult because they operate by different logics. The first Adam has a pretty straightforward logic, the logic of the world, the logic of economics. Input leads to output, effort leads to reward, practice makes perfect. Adam 2 lives by an inverse logic, which is a moral logic, which is filled with ironies. You have to surrender to something outside yourself to gain strength within yourself. You have to conquer your desire to get what you want. Failure leads to success because it leads to learning. Learning sometimes leads to failure. And so his argument, we have these two sides, and with two different logics. We happen to live in a society with an imbalance. We live in a meritocratic culture where Adam 1 is praised and rewarded and paid attention to, and Adam 2 is not rewarded and sometimes neglected. And I would say most of us, and certainly me through most of my life, have been primarily Adam 1 oriented, career and worldly oriented. And what of Adam's 1's, but if you are only that, and I would say my students are frequently only that, you turn into sort of a shrewd animal, crafty, playing life as a game and turning everything into a game. One of Adam 1's sins is that he makes himself the center of the world. He identifies himself as the whole personality and doesn't acknowledge that Adam 2 exists. He has his own instrumental way of thinking and doesn't recognize there are other ways of thinking. And even when he deals with religion, he tries to turn religion into a business deal. I give you a little prayer, you give me a little joy and salvation. And so that is the sin of Adam 1. Adam 2 has its own sins, though. It's more spiritual and more humble, but it has its own sins. One of them is to withdraw from the world, to want to return to an island of monastic purity. One of them is to not take Reinhold Niebuhr seriously and understand that you have to take morally hazardous action to do anything in the world. And there's sort of a left-wing version of this sin, which are things like pacifism, to think we can all be brought together through love. There's sort of a right-wing version, which is the self-righteousness of the culture warrior. And so the job in life is to find a balance between these two atoms. And Soloveitchik would say there's no resting point, because as the world changes, as life changes, you're always trying to be both things, innerly good, outwardly successful. But this struggle is the central drama of life, not only finding the balance, but struggling against the sins within each sides of our nature. And life is properly organized around two sets of these struggles, against the balance and against sin. And people should regard the struggle against sin and weakness as the central drama of life, more important than outward achievement. It's a campaign that gives excitement to life. The campaign against your own internal weakness gives drama to the day. It gives consequence to the struggle over your inner nature. And that character is nothing more or less than your way of waging this campaign. That if you don't have the concept of inner struggle and inner flaw, you do not have the concept of character. Character only applies to the struggle against your own sinfulness. And if you take that concept of the struggle away, then you've drained character of all meaning. It just becomes a good word that you hope to have. And so that concept of sin is elemental to the concept of character. And if you don't know what sin is, and if you don't accept that you're sinful, then you really are not fighting against anything. You're just special.